Hi, everyone. I am really excited for this panel because there are so many ways in which artists can get paid that is not just streaming and live. I know we just wrapped up a live session, so this felt like a really good progression to talk about other ways to make money, other ways to engage with fans, even all kinds of things like that. So I have brought on some experts in that field to talk all about that. So without further ado, I'm going to bring our moderator up to our stage. Hi, Lisa. Lovely to have you.
Happy to be here. Even lovelier to be here. Thank you, sis.
Amazing. And I'm going to bring up our panelists as well. Lise, Katie, Leroy, Aaron. Hello.
Hello.
Take it away,
Hi.
guys.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. Here we go.
Oh, good. Take it away, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, we have 40 minutes, folks. So I'm jumping right in it. I'm Lisa Robinson. You don't need to know more about me. We jumping right in it because we're going to maximize these 40 minutes. We're going to have time for Q&A. So let's just get this party started. As they say, let's introduce yourself, share a bit about what you do while you're here. And let's get the conversation rolling. Elise, let's start with you. You're on mute, sis. You're on mute. All good.
There we go. I was going all in. Sorry. So I'm Elise. I'm director of Revere Arts, and I am a classical music agent and consultant. And I've been in the classical music industry for over 20 years now.
Okay, awesome. Classical. Katie?
Hi, y'all. I'm Katie Novak. I am the VP of Marketing and Partnerships at TBA Agency. We are a independent booking agency that represents around 250 clients, ranging from artists like Jungle to Remy Wolf to Ethel Keane to a slew of Latin artists. And I oversee the marketing department and our brand partnerships department. So happy to be here.
Leroy.
Hi, everyone. I am Leroy. I am the co-founder of Big Ass Kids ecosystem. Also was a manager for most of my career in music. Now I am focused on building the BAK community, which services music professionals and artists, building community to help with artist services, IP creation, career development, and things of just growth overall in the music community. So welcome, excited to be here and talk about alternative funding for the artist community.
Awesome. And definitely last, but definitely not least, Erin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin. I am the founder of Southside. We are a creator platform for licensed fan design merch. So essentially, we make it easy for music artists to collaborate with their fans on merch designs. We handle the full end-to-end experience. So that includes submission organization, production, fulfillment, licensing, etc.
Right. Sounds good. So I do have a list of questions, but they already know I'm going to be jumping around. This is more, want to say a conversation. You all in the audience are eavesdropping. But I'm going to jump around. But let's start with what most people most want to know. What kinds of alternative financing or revenue models are actually working in practice today? And Erin, do you want to start us off?
Sure. I mean, I can just plug in exactly what we're doing here at Southside. So the real premise behind what we're doing is that we found that there was a market of fans making really cool designs, selling it on platforms like Etsy, Redbubble, TikTok Shop, the list goes on, and that music artists were not participating in that because it was considered counterfeit merch. So what we do is that we try to have artists participate in that by actually collaborating with fans in a real way that won't end up with a fan receiving a cease and desist for IP infringement. So we are trying to increase the pie for the music artists rather than combat their fans. And we're not just for large artists who have counterfeit issues. We've also worked with small artists who might not have fans creating something for them right now, but they just have a talented fan base and community of people who are sharing fan art in Discord, Reddit channels, and they want to work with those fans on designs that actually represent what they want to be seeing and buying.
Great. Awesome. Love the part about counterfeit. Well, we don't like the part about counterfeit. We're going to get more into that as it relates to streaming. But glad you brought that up. But we're going to play nice here. We're going to be family for the next 40 minutes. Whoever wants to jump in, let's go for it. Katie, Leroy, Elise,
Yeah,
you want to jump in?
sure. Katie, you want to go? Should I take it?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, maybe I
So,
do have to start thinking.
No, all good. So about a year and a half ago, we launched a platform called the Playground that it serves the purpose of helping artists find the right resources, whether it's people, whether it's infrastructure, more of a customized approach to their careers, and also on the flip side, we also helped music professionals who are transitioning into becoming more entrepreneurs and starting their own agencies to become self-sustainable in their careers as well. And during this process we've identified not just people in this community, but other platforms that help artists simplify their day-to-day roles. And on the alternative funding side, there are two platforms that were really interesting to us and we brought them into our community. One is Indify, that introduces a new model for artists to find funding. It really, what it does, it introduces artists to whether it's capital partners, strategic marketers, people that were making an impact in the infrastructure of an artist, and it incentivizes them to participate. So rather than taking a retainer fee, they're taking a percentage of a royalty because now there's no capped upside in terms of what the artist can make. So on Indify, artists can find partners that can invest capital into their career and also pair them up with a specific partner to help grow their career. So it's a non-traditional way from just signing to a label or a distributor to get money, but you're finding the right people who make a direct impact into your career and bringing them on board and incentivizing them to work a little harder because the harder you work, the bigger the result, the more they stand to make. So that's one way that we've encouraged artists to explore. And then also the catalog licensing alternative, which I can get into a little bit now. I know it's on the list of questions, but what it does basically, it removes the artist from selling the rights to their future music or catalog in exchange for an advance for their past music to incorporate into upcoming music without having to recoup from future music. So it's a different structure for artists to find funding without having to give up ownership of their music for a short term and using that to grow anything they got coming up. So those are just two examples how BAK works with not just personnel, but other tools that can introduce different ways of doing business.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And like you said, we're gonna get further into that later as far as catalog licensing. Katie.
Yeah. So I mean, in my work, a lot of the alternative funding that we find is in the form of brand partnerships. And so, we work really closely with our artists to kind of identify strategy, with what they have coming down the pipe, if that's an album, if that's a tour, if that's a single, what have you, and finding a sort of narrative and story that they want to tell, and then bringing that to brands and kind of trying to sell that into brands. So like a lot of our work is incoming and we get RFPs that come to our desk all day long, but the work that is really meaningful to us and that actually yields really big dividends is when we can actually create a campaign from nothing, from scratch, and build it with the artist and then pitch that to targeted brands and see who wants to kind of join in. So for example, last year, we created a campaign with 3 of our artists, Kuko, Yeji, and Blade, and each one used Microsoft's AI suite to create something new. So that was, one of them made a music video, one of them made tour art, the other are like tour visuals, and the other made like a chat bot, like a cool, like kind of online game. And each of those things not only were a cool visual piece of art that they like presented to the world, but they also helped promote a new single. They were the actual tour visuals that they used on tour and still use on tour. And so these things had like practical, meaningful value that was paid for by Microsoft that they otherwise would have had to pay for themselves. So, you know, touring is extremely expensive, as we all know. You know, getting someone to make tour visuals is extremely expensive. Making music videos is extremely expensive. So it was cool that we were able to sort of use this partnership to tell these 3 different cool stories that then also help the artists beyond just the campaign itself. So that's just like one example of how we've been able to do that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And Elise?
Hey, so I'm on the fringes of what you guys do. So in the classical music industry, it's generally private funding and grants, but actually that can cross over into the commercial music industry. And going depending on where the territory is, we work globally. There are various different range of grants and actually supporters that you can engage with. And it's about building out your brand and who you are as a person, and then they align with who you are as an artist. So, for example, with She Said So, they have an amazing list of grants that people in America can go for, but actually Europe is probably the best place. If you are in mainland Europe, Creative Europe has a whole bunch of financial streams which artists have access to. It's the leading across all the territories. Sadly, the UK does not cover that because of Brexit, but actually there are various different support systems that you have per territory, and actually that's kind of what a lot of artists in my world, but actually commercially, are looking at now, because it is available, but actually you don't see it. It's kind of building that network so you can find it. It's kind of this hidden network of money that's available to allow you to do the things you need to do without sometimes going for the brand partnerships, because it is there, it's accessible, but it's just finding out where it is.
Great. So better healthcare and better income streams. Great. Great. One up on us again. You mentioned income streams, and that's what we're here. One of these questions is, why is this topic so important? We know money, right? And things are changing. The industry has evolving. I would love you all to each talk about sustainable income for someone, because I'm looking in the chat. I don't think Beyonce's on the line or Jay-Z. So if you're not a Beyonce or a Jay-Z, how can you sustain? How can you have this sustainable income realistically? What do you all advise someone to, the person coming out who's just starting, or midway through their career as well? And Erin, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so when we first started, like my idea was, let's go solve this problem for the biggest artists who are having the biggest counterfeit issues. And then when we dug deeper, we realized, you know, as I mentioned before, there are these smaller artists who have these really tapped in fans. And so we wanted to meet them where they are. So there's one smaller artist that we worked with. She probably had less than 100,000 monthly listeners. We brought her on. She did a general fan merch campaign. It was just a test to see. She's one of our first artists we ever brought on, and you know, sales were good. You know, she's small, like she got some sales that she was happy with. But then rather than making it a one and done campaign, she decided that when her single came out a few months later, she would go back into Southside and engage with the fan creations again. And she released merch. And then, you know, she started to tease that she has an EP coming out in a few months. And by the time that EP came out, fans were already creating designs and submissions for the EP. And so in a way, it was almost like she was training her audience brick by brick, rather than just assuming that the first sale was going to be a big drop and that she'd be done. Like that was fun. And okay, like what's next? So by creating this as a strategy within the life cycle of this EP, she was able to see sales grow, and her fans were able to go with her through that process. And more than a year later, we still see sales every so often come in for that merch that dropped a year ago. So for us, we really like to preach that brick by brick approach of bringing your fans in, meeting them where they are, and actually making it meaningful rather than a gimmicky one-time thing that you'll never think about again in a year.
Yeah, Katie, did you want to add? Oh, I'm so sorry, Leroy, did you want to jump in? Katie's head was shaking as much as mine, so I thought she's ready to go. So
no,
Katie, go ahead. You got it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I feel like, you know, there's so many tools that artists can use these days to keep their fans continuously engaged. And so whether that's merch drops that are, you know, not just a one and done, like Erin said, but like a consistent kind of, a fan knows to expect it. So they know to look out for every 3 months, you know, so and so does a merch drop or whatever. But also, I think like fan communities generally do a very good job at this, where they create moments for artists to tap into. So, you know, like the kind of world of like the paid fan club doesn't really exist anymore, so to speak, but allowing for, you know, certain, like a new single that's coming out and they're only selling a certain amount of cool vinyl like press of that single, or just finding like creative ways to give your fans something that you can continuously make money off of. I mean, also to, you know, as expensive as it is, like artists are touring more and more because that's seemingly one of the best ways to keep sustainable income. And whether or not that's a good idea is a completely different conversation. But I do think that that is, you know, a way that artists are continuing to have sustainable income, is just, you know, by playing more shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was just going to jump in on what Katie said there about the fan club idea. You know, one of the things that artists are also doing, which is another way of creating that sustainability, is residencies, because there are so many grassroots venues that want to have that continuous booking, having their venues open. And actually, it's great for an upcoming artist, because actually you need to be working on material. You need somewhere for your artist to come and see you. It's great if it's like monthly across a year. You're actually building your profile out. You're building your repertoire out. And it's a great sort of collaboration and partnership with a venue. So, you know, that's another way of doing it. And actually, you do a box office split on the door, and you're building your revenue, and you're working as a marketer, you're working as a brander, you're doing all of those things as an artist, and actually learning a lot along the way.
Yeah, and that's all great points. I think what Erin said, a key phrase like this brick by brick approach. You know, I think in order to have a sustainable income, you need something to sustain, right? And you have to have that audience. I think LaRussell, who's done a great job of like being independent and growing his career, he said it took 10 years to be an overnight success, right? You have to put in, you know, the time. You have to be consistent. You have to drop music and really pay attention to your audience. You know, rather have a smaller, you know, core of fans than having a large number of just kind of passive listeners who aren't really supporters. So I think before getting to that sustainable income, you have to lay the brick by brick foundation of building that audience who's going to support everything you do, and that requires an important step before you can even answer that question. You have to put in the consistency to grow that fan one by one to the point where, you know, you're putting out music, you're doing shows, you're dropping merch bundles, whether it's hats, stickers, anything that you've attached your brand to, and you're getting supporters. So I think that's the first step to even have a sustainable income engine. So, you know, I think that brick by brick thing is something that's not to be overlooked as it relates to building, especially from the emerging artist level, like from the early beginning.
I love that, and it's actually a segue. And I think we're probably all going to have dreams about bricks tonight. Thank you, Erin. But all in good fun. But and maybe Erin, this is for you actually. But what support or infrastructure is still missing for artists trying to pursue these paths? How should they be supported by managers, labels, and other platforms? And how can they adapt to support these models? What would you recommend? How can their team per se support them to build this brick by brick?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to like merch, we found that, you know, we would talk to artists who have said like we've done fan merch before. We actually have done it on our own, but it was a really overwhelming process to get DMs from fans, and they're getting emails, and some of these fans might be minors, and how do you handle that? How do you handle licensing? And like, do you want to have your big scary lawyer send a contract to this 17-year-old girl who just wants to design cool merch? Like, how does that process all look? And it some of those logistics take away the magic of the collaboration itself. So we found that artists would get really overwhelmed because they didn't know what's the right way. How do you pay your fans? No one's going to be happy. Are you doing a flat fee? Are you doing a royalty? You know, trying to figure out the answers to do it correctly. I found that there was never really a right way because no system existed. And that's why we started building it. We wanted to take care of all of those logistics so that the artist can just focus on the actual collaboration with the fan. And we're still building it based off of feedback that we get, things that are working or not working. But for us, we found that it didn't exist because for so long, merch was kind of always done the same way. It's okay, merch is here, link in bio, go buy it. And like, that's kind of it. And we wanted to reimagine how merch can exist beyond just a transaction, and figure out what does that system look like for it to actually work for both fans and for music artists. So for us, we think that it's trying to imagine how your e-commerce can look beyond just selling something and just moving on. And, you know, so in a biased way, I would suggest that the manager should look into sell side. But, you know, if that's not of interest, I would just encourage them to be able to think about their merch strategy beyond just the transaction itself, and thinking about community and engagement.
Appreciate that strategy. That's that S word we keep hearing, sustainability. So awesome. Does anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is I think, you know, being in music for about 20 years, like we know what we know, but sometimes it's easy to forget that an emerging artist, you know, doesn't have the education or experience to know what they have to look into. They don't know what they don't know. So one of the things that we focus on, especially with the playground, is offering, you know, workshops. We have professionals in specific fields to teach. A lot of them don't even realize what it takes to register your songs on a PRO or the MLC or things of that nature. There's a lot of money sitting on the table that they don't even know how to collect. So it's education plays a big role into, you know, teaching these artists how to collect money, create opportunities, create tools, use tools to help them build a sustainable career. You know, it's just the education comes in many forms. It comes from just understanding what's out there from a tool perspective, and also like just the platforms and people who are out there teaching and creating workshops and networking to understand how to, you know, how to tap into other sources of revenue. So education to me, without that, you know, artists aren't going to. It's gonna be very difficult to focus on music and building a career and all the things around, you know, your art. You know, the business is equally as important. At the end of the day, these artists are founders, right? They're founders of their business. In any other industry, when you're a founder of your business, you need to understand the business side, not just the product side. So, you know, education to me is one of the biggest components of getting these artists on the right track to knowing how to make and sustain, you know, their finances.
Yeah, and
Katie or
I was going to say, I would add on to that, and I wouldn't even say just for emerging artists, even established artists. The market changes. The market is completely different to what it was 20 years ago. But actually, the way you present artists is completely different. You know, you may have an artist who is, you know, award-winning, but actually, this album just hasn't done anything, or it's just not here. You have to present things in a different way in order to create that sustainability. So actually, you're always evolving yourself as an individual, and don't be afraid to seek out new information, new ways of understanding things. Google, I love that you raised Google. Like there's so many different things to learn about with analytics. Like keep like building your networks, but also building your brain, like building your knowledge. It's so important to keep that knowledge coming and going. You know, it's so important. I came from the commercial world, and then I've been in classical for 20 years. So it's been great to sort of meld the two. They may be different, but actually there's so many similarities. So I'd say to like my counterparts on the panel, like look at what's going on in the other genres, because actually there's things you can take from that you can give to your artists.
Sure. And I must say education is key. As someone 30 years in the game, income tracking primarily. Someone put Amani Roberts, I love it. He said they call it the music business for a reason. You have to know the business of the business. Educate yourself. I came into the game. There was no Google. There was Donald Passman's book, which was the Bible. So love that, Leroy, and that we're saying that. And Katie, again, shaking your head. Did you want to add to that as well about the importance of education overall?
No.
Okay, no, all good.
Yeah, you know, I'll say, like, you know, someone gave me a phrase like a few years ago, and it's like, it's not the music business, it's the rights business, right?
That part.
You know what I'm saying? It's not. It's understanding the rights and licensing and giving up ownership, licensing your right. Like it's not the music business, it's the rights business. That's the trick.
Definitely.
I'll also add,
go ahead, Katie.
It's also like the name and likeness business, right? Because much of my job is explaining and educating artists on what their like face and name should cost, right? Like if someone is coming to you and asking for a brand partnership and they want 3 Instagram stories and a TikTok and a content shoot, and you know, they are only going to pay you $5,000. Like in some scenarios that might be fine, but it's also like you have to look at this holistically. How many followers do you have? What does the brand get out of you giving your name and likeness to this campaign? Like what should this cost? And so many artists um tend to undervalue themselves in that way, in that space, and because they just don't know like what they should be asking for. And so part of my job is to be like, no, you should like we can get more money for this. Like we can make you more money, and your worth is higher than what you think it is in these very specific ways. So like it is certainly the rights business for sure. It's but you know, in this kind of work, it's also if someone wants to use your name and use your photo and use your image, that costs money, and it costs more than you think it does.
Katie, brings us to my next question. You're talking about costs as far as money's concerned. What about costs to an artist's identity? And this may be better suited for you and Leroy, but please, anyone, please feel free to jump in. But how can artists approach brand or partnership revenue without diluting their identity, without feeling
Yeah.
they're quote unquote selling out?
For sure. I mean, for us, I think a lot of times what we try to do is negotiate with the brand to allow the artist to kind of be in the driver's seat creatively. So, you know, there's certainly instances where a brand just wants an artist to like hold up a Coca-Cola can and just be like, I'm so and so and I love Coca-Cola, and that's like what they want. But I think a lot of campaigns tend to be narrative based, and they tend to want to tell a story. And so for us, the question becomes like, that's great. Can the artist be the one who narrates this and actually talks about the story they want to tell? And I think when you can kind of reverse engineer a brand campaign and allow the artist to be in the driver's seat and you know work with the brand to create the content that makes them feel good and authentic, then those actually yield the best campaigns because they come from a place of reality and from a place of vulnerability as opposed to a place of like capitalistic intent, if that makes sense. And so for us, I think when we do this work, we really try to, like I said, negotiate with the brand to, well, first of all, we have a conversation with the artist of like, does this feel good to you? Is this even something you want to pursue? And if the answer is yes, then the conversation then becomes, we are very interested in this and the artist really wants to participate. But we do want the artist to have some level of creative control. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, the brand is like pretty okay with that. As long as there's collaboration and an ability for everyone to kind of get what they need out of it, they usually are fine with that because they want something authentic too. They don't want there to just be like this flat, one-dimensional campaign. So yeah, that was a long way of saying.
No, authenticity. I think we appreciate it. Leroy, did you have something to add?
Yeah. I mean, from like putting my manager hat on, I you know, when a brand approaches, I look at it like, well, we're obviously providing a value, right, for the brand, right, and they're providing a value for us. So I want to understand what's the value that they're getting, you know, when I'm negotiating. And you know, I always say to the artist I'm representing, and a lot of times you get an email with a brand who's interested. And it's like, what's the ballpark? Like, what's the you wanted us, you tell me what the ballpark is, right? You know, you give me the first number. I don't know what you're playing with. I don't know how much, I don't know what your number, your starting point is, right? And then from there, I can determine, you know, what's the range. And I might have a number in my head and you might think we're worth more than what we think we're worth in this equation. So for me, it's also understanding what we're offering, you know, and also the bigger the deliverable, the more it takes you out of market for a different competitor, right? So the more you're doing for a brand, the more other brands say, okay, well, they just work with our competitor. There might not be a play here to do a deal with this artist in the near future. So the more you're doing, the more you're removing yourself from other opportunities with a brand. So you have to equate, you know, how much finance you're losing by doing this deal. So that increases the value of the dollar of what you're getting, right? So for me, it's, it's understanding, yes, a check is nice, but this removes us from a specific category for X amount of time. I need to make up the difference with the offer. So I need to, the artist needs to understand their value, not just, oh my God, this artist, this brand wants to give us money to do a post. Okay, great. They're approaching us because your audience is who they want to speak to. So there's a very specific amount of value that we bring to the table. So we have to make sure we're arranging that in the negotiation. So I guess for me, it's like always let the brand come with the first number so you can understand where you stand in the negotiation process.
Amen to
Love that. I think that, yeah. Go ahead, whoever, Elise, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, so I approach it slightly differently in that I look at what we would get out of a year's relationship with a brand. So when we had a brand partnership with a leading fashion brand, I looked at actually what those engagements were throughout the year, and actually the profile of those engagements, because knowing the level of profile of those engagements was the room that my artist was going to be in, was the subsequent brand partnerships that we would get from it. So actually, yes, we had the figure that we wanted, but actually it was, what's he going to get out of it? How's he going to grow his network? How's he going to be in these rooms that we couldn't have got him in unless he had this brand? So actually he was there creating capital in a different way. He was creating his creative capital by actually being in these spaces. And that's kind of what I look at. I look at, what can Hackathon widen his network, because that will only widen his creative capital.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, to that point, I think it makes a lot of sense. That's what the example I gave is one of the factors, right? And I think sometimes, there are things you do for free, or things that you do for little money, because the opportunity itself leads to growth, and it leads to, a similar audience, an audience that you want to be in, right? And you might have to take a little less to get a bigger growth opportunity for the artist. So I think from a financial point is what I was speaking to, but at least to your point, sometimes factoring in the goal from the artist perspective, sometimes that's more important than the financial offering of the opportunity. So I agree with that.
The long game, right? The long game. Everybody, one was right. We would agree upon the long game, Katie. I know. And I wish we had like another 40 minutes. If there are questions, please put them in the chat. I'll try to get to as many. But Katie, please take it away.
No, just quickly. I mean, we talk about cultural capital all the time, and a kind of phrase we use a lot is brand deals beget brand deals, right? So if you do a deal, and you do a deal that gains you some cultural capital and also some financial capital, and you're posting on you're doing your posts, you're talking about it online, you're getting that cultural capital out of it, other brands do notice, and then they also want to attach you to their campaigns because you have that cultural capital. And sometimes it's not even brands that are even on your target list necessarily. They might come from left field and go, hey, we saw that you did this really cool campaign with who it's so and so, are you interested in working with us as well? And like that's happened quite a bit because they've seen the cool work that come out of these maybe less financially lucrative but culturally lucrative deals, and then it kind of is a snowball effect. So like there is truth to what everyone is saying, which is like you want the brand to come to you with the money first, but also you want to understand what you're going to get out of this culturally and what it's going to do for you as an artist in the long run, and how that's going to like beget more deals that actually match your vibe and match what you're trying to do as an artist.
Yeah. Can I add,
Nadia,
Lisa?
Sure.
This is great. I love this is like a Minerva when it comes to these kind of conversations. But I think it's there are different kind of brand deals, right? There's these transactional ones that you do it for a check sometime, and there are these deals that you do because you want to build a relationship with the brand. Like you want this brand to be part of your career in the long run, and at times sometimes you over deliver on your deliverables just to be like, hey, they went the extra mile to do this for us. Let's they have a tour coming up in 8 months. Maybe you want to participate in helping offset some costs. So I think it's important to also understand, like you said, at least the long game, right? It's not always about the check. It's about, okay, let's build a relationship with a brand that's authentic to our brand, and let's maybe be part of this ride a bit longer term and grow into maybe a larger campaign a year down the line. I have some examples, but I don't want to take over the 40 minutes with.
Okay.
We got 2 minutes of counting. And Nadia, I think that probably answered your question. Nadia's question was when do exclusive brand deals make sense? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Versus not. I think we answered that. I think they hit on that. Um, how much time will we take? Okay, how much? Let me see. Elise suggested. Okay, it was answered, Nadia. So thank you for that. I just want to use the last couple of minutes, just to say I know you could reach out to any one of these wonderful, phenomenal people on LinkedIn. I'm sure follow them on socials. Can we just go around any last thoughts, anything that you just want people to know that you didn't get to say, or maybe you just want to, put an exclamation point on it? Elise, you want to start?
Yeah, there is so much funding and grants out there. I saw in the chat that someone said it's really limited and narrow. It's not as narrow as you think, actually. There are more and more new trusts coming about and coming out, and that's in every single territory that actually are targeting musicians and artists and creative. Even if you are in the commercial music world, you are essentially a composer, you are a songwriter, you are a creator. It's just the framing. Don't be afraid of the language when you're applying for funding. It's just a different way of looking at it.
Thank you. Erin?
Yeah. I mean, I think just beyond music right now, like life is stressful for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are struggling, both artists and fans, and it can be hard to know how to like ask your fans to pay for your art when they're struggling in their own lives. And I think it's just more of a reason that people need to get creative with how they engage with their community. And so that means being maybe more intentional with how you approach, whether it's a brand partnership or for us, your merch strategy, and actually meeting fans where they are rather than viewing them as an ATM machine. And so for us, we really try to find respect in the process. So we try really hard to make sure that for us, fans are creating for us. So how can we value them in the same way that a music artist wants to be valued for their art? And so I think that there's a lot of creative ways that emerging artists, independent artists can find capital to propel their careers. But I think also it's trying to look at the perspective of who you are promoting your music to and trying to actually understand like where they're coming from and where to meet them so that it can actually be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Awesome. Katie?
Yeah, just kind of going off of what Erin said. I mean, I think building community as an artist is the best thing you can do, because what you are generating is you're building a group of people that are going to want to stick with you for the long run. And that might mean that financially it's not all coming to you at once, but it will come over time, whether that's in the form of merch, or whether that's in the form of brand deals, or whether that's in the form, what have you. I think building community, not just with your fan base, but also outwardly, is with your relationships with other musicians, brands, etc., will yield great benefits over time. So it's kind of playing what we keep saying, going back to, is the long game is really important to think about here, because it is really the long game.
Oh, Leroy? Thank you, Katie. Leroy?
Yeah, just understanding, there are no shortcuts in this industry. Like everyone has to do the work, and there are sacrifices, and it's going to become a time where it looks very difficult. And I think Katie, you mentioned a good point of building community, but there's also some really great communities to join, to be part of, to rely on, to find resources. So don't ever feel like what we say, at BAK, just because you're independent doesn't mean you have to do it alone, right? There are some really great communities to be a part of, to share resources, to teach, to learn, to barter. So, just have to do a bit of the homework to see what is out there, and don't think that, don't be intimidated by having to do everything by yourself.
Awesome. This was great. I mean, can we keep going? I don't know. Nobody's stopping us. I feel like I'll be here not all night, but I'm not sure. But I do want to say, I think the takeaway here is capital, and not just looking at it as this, which is important, the almighty dollar, as they say, but capital in yourself, your fans, your authenticity. We use some really good keywords: engagement, community, options, education. Again, we talk about touring. Everyone is commenting on it, but do you know how you get that touring income? Do you know how the venues figure it out? It's, you should know these things. And if not, have people on your team that do, like these wonderful people that were on the call. So I hope I learned something. Yeah. So I hope the audience did as well. This was amazing. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for the audience And Christine, of course, for bringing the band together, as I like to say.
Thank you, Lisa, for being a
Thank
wonderful
you.
moderator. I'm glad to finally have you measure music. Thank
Thank
you to
you.
my amazing panelists for such great perspectives from all over the industry. Really appreciate it. I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions. There's always so many questions, but thank you all for all of your engagement throughout this whole session. Yeah, we are done the session. Thank you, panelists. We have one last
Okay.
keynote and then we're done for the day. All right. I will see you all over there. Bye, guys.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.